Start recording. Okay. Assalamu alaikum and good morning from the East Coast and early good morning from the West Coast and good evening and the greeting as per time. I welcome all of you to today's session. That's quite an interesting session. It's a mix of theory, business, and technology. And we have the wonderful people around the keynote speaker and then the wonderful panelists. We have a wonderful mix of business and technology. And we have recently been joined by Mr. Abadullah, who is the director from Drug Regulatory Authority Pakistan, Dr. Fasad Zaman from Europe, Dr. Junaid Kalia, a wonderful mix of technology, innovation, telecom, and healthcare from the Merit Group, and Dr. Danish Bhatti, an MD, and the key chairman, of this Merit Committee, and Dr. Shahid Rafi. So these are just the name, but I think today's session is going to be, so different, so involving. Let me introduce to you Dr. Umar Hayat, who is Vice President of CMC and Supply Chain at Union Therapeutics, having over 2 decades of experience in pharmaceutical development, manufacturing, and supply chain, and part of many startup companies who were later on acquired by a group like the Relapsa, that is taken up by Glenasia for $1.62 billion US, Anacor, which was acquired by Pfizer for $5.2 billion US, and Transcept Pharma, just to mention a few. And then, part of innovative treatment like pivotal role in the treatment of hyperkalemia, Veltesa, and then, many more activities. And he is a co-founder of UNAMP, and at the moment he is working on an innovative product, Replite gel for anogenital warts. And he earned his Ph.D. from Toulouse, France. So he's a francophonic and bilingual rather than tri or quadrilingular, because if we include Urdu and Punjabi, he is basically a Punjabi. So sometimes I enjoy his language when very pure Punjabi. You really miss here in North America. And did his postdoc from Montreal, and his Master of Science from University of Punjab in chemistry. So that's the introduction of Umar. Now, Mr. Sameer Dosal, let me introduce as a panelist. He's a president, Canada, Pakistan Business Development Council, and part of a series of initiatives inviting the federal chambers, inviting the Pakistani chambers, local chambers, taking the delegate from Canada to Pakistan, headed by the Minister of Science and Technology, and part and parcel of all the initiative for the last about decades. So that's his introduction. And Dr. Fasad Zaman, you are all familiar. We are honored with his presence all the time. He spared his time and participate in these activities. And we have with us Dr. Danish Bhatti, who is the co-chair of this APPNA Merit Committee, and Dr. Shahid Rafiq, who is also part of APPNA Merit Committee. So not really spending a lot of time on these niceties. Let's request Dr. Umar Hayat to share his presentation. Please, over to Dr. Umar Hayat.
Thank you very much, Dr. Azad. Thanks a lot. And thank you, panel, and thank you, everybody who has dialed in. Today's presentation certainly going to touch the lot of sections of pharmaceutical. And let me start my presentation. So you have given me the control, Dr. Azad, I assume?
Walid, control.
Yes, you
to-
have. Try to share, please.
Thank you. Perfect. Do you guys see my presentation?
Yes. Can you put it on the
Slideshow.
slideshow, please? Yeah, that's
Thank you.
good.
So can I request everybody to see the chat box and type yes? So this way I will be sure that you have not only identified that icon, but also know how to use it. Because I'm not a good presenter in general, and especially when it comes to the Zoom. So I think I'm gonna still try to make it like very much interactive. So that's why I need you to identify that icon and enter the word yes. So this way we know that you can use that icon. Let me arrange my, okay, perfect. It's bothering me a little bit. Let me try doing something else. Bear with me just a second. I'm just trying to remove these bars. So let's start with the safe harbor statement.
This is fine. Go ahead, Doctor.
It's fine. Okay, thank you very much. So the purpose of this presentation is to share the general knowledge and experience about the subject, and is not intended for any promotional or marketing of any particular product or the company or a business. The ideas presented and discussed should not be considered or implemented without taking the due measures of the public safety and the compliance of regulations. So with that, I will start the trillion-dollar market, the pharmaceutical industry, the myths, the opportunities, and the strategy. I mean, literally, what we would be talking is the dynamics of this such huge healthcare industry, and try to see how we can dissect and see what are the opportunities and what kind of strategies we can use to take a share of that huge market, and especially Pakistani pharmaceutical industry. As Dr. Uzair mentioned, I'm not a guy who worked for big pharma companies. I love these startups, and I have already worked for 3 startups. One after the other has been quite successful. Union Therapeutics is my 4th startup, and I will say I joined them back in 2017. The team is amazing, and I do my due diligence when I join the companies. And I can tell you today, we are almost on the track of the success. We just signed a $260 million deal with Innovent Biopharma from China. And we got like a $20 million upfront cash payment. And then there would be like the milestone payments as we progress in the development. And when I say the milestone payments, what it means is really when you achieve a goal and you are given the money, which means you can go now the next mile. So that is what makes me to say that we are all already on the track of the success. And then I also have my own, like a co-founded with my ex-boss, actually, UND Pharma, and we are developing the replied gel for the genital warts. It's not a new drug, but it's not a generic either. We came up with the idea of 505(b)(2). But we will be discussing actually how the different opportunities present and how you can grab those opportunities. And we will be discussing this trillion-dollar market. So actually, it's not trillion-dollar market. It's a more than a trillion-dollar market. And I will say the pharmaceutical industry is a part of the healthcare. And I think that that's a kind of, I try to use this definition to justify our presentation from APPNA platform. I mean, who is really a group of doctors, and we appreciate that they gave us the opportunity to present the pharmaceutical industry from their platform. So pharmaceutical industry is a part of the healthcare sector, which discovers, develops, produces, and markets the drugs used as medicine. So this industry from 2015 has been growing with the compound annual growth rate of 6.7%. And I took the numbers of 2019 because since 2019 with COVID, all the projections or all the growth rates are transitional. So those numbers, we are not sure whether will survive after the COVID or may survive after the COVID, the situation if it doesn't improve. But I thought it would be more relevant if I use the numbers prior to COVID. So the year 2019, this industry was $1.22 trillion. So it was more than that. And based on the projected costs, I mean, the numbers are everywhere if you approach to any of those research companies. But I use this number from Navadi, and they are projecting like it should be $1.57 trillion. So by 2023. And that's the number. There might be the several drivers for the growth of this industry, but I would like to touch on the few. So I think the one reason is certainly the population is growing in certain geographies and decreasing in other geographies, but increasing geriatric population is increasing in those areas where probably the overall population is decreasing. But more important, I think our understanding of the disease has improved significantly. We have reached to the point where we can link the disease with the genomics, and we can repair the genes and reverse the disease. We can repair the genes and reverse the disease. So that's one reason I think this industry is going to increase. Biologics are on the horizon, and they're constantly increasing in numbers, especially because of our understanding of the human body. And also, I think the way the diagnostics are working, there used to be the time, I mean, if it was mostly like a thermodynamic, and the way the disease and remedies were evaluated, like if you have a simple example of the fever, and you measure the temperature, if fever is gone, then you say, oh, he is treated. But now I think we have gone with the markers, the biomarkers. So we don't need to look for just the symptoms. We know the inside what's going on. And there are a lot of validated markers, biomarkers, where if you can even diagnose upfront the possibility or potential of somebody suffering with certain disease. So I think that's also have improved, which is also another driver for the growth of this industry. We have understood the human body, and we are capable to simulate the human bodies. I mean, we understand the mechanics of the body, and there are a lot of devices also who are coming into the picture, and that's another factor for the growth of this industry. Now, of course, we talked, it's a huge industry. It has multiple components. It's at the end of the day, it's a business and making like more than $1 trillion. I would like to look like where we stand from Pakistani pharmaceutical industry. Actually, even before going there, I will say I would like to see the distribution of that market across the world. So if you, and that's the projections for 2023. If you look at that, the North America is really with a 45.33% is leading the industry and will maintain that position in 2023. The second is the Asia Pacific, where the percentage or portion is like 4.07%. And then followed by Europe, where it's 20.24%. So those are the three major markets when we talk about the pharmaceutical industry and the distribution of more than $1 trillion market. So now, of course, we are in Asia Pacific, and let's see how we are doing as a Pakistani pharmaceutical industry. And that's on my next slide. Okay, so the Pakistan exported pharmaceutical products worth of 211.674 million US dollar in year 2018 and 2019, with a growth rate of 8.6%, and that's the numbers I got from Pakistan Bureau of Statistics. If you look at what's our share in that, I mean, it's really the fraction of $1.22 trillion. I will also say it's really a fraction. I mean, that fraction is one like a 500,000th. I mean, numbers speaks aloud. So I was also thinking, if you have looked at my resume, I worked for Anacor, which was acquired by Pfizer, and that was sold for 5.2 billion US dollar. And then I was saying, so if we take the overall contribution in terms of the export from Pakistani pharmaceutical industry, that is equivalent to the 25 years of Pakistani whole industry to match a one small company out of Bay Area. And that tells me that we are far, far behind. I'm not going to talk too much. I mean, I'm very optimistic and like always think of the plus side of the business, but I think if we are so far behind, it's worth to criticize rather than just to be happy with what we have. So, and I was also trying to see like how we are doing. I mean, if you look at this map, and we are operating from the Asia Pacific, where there are two major players and very aggressive players, China and India. And I think that's even few companies might be exporting to some South African countries and probably to like the Tajikistans and so forth. But let's say if I do my calculations and based on the percentage, the Asia Pacific in the $1 trillion market, the total market size for the Asia Pacific is roughly like 294 billion US dollar. And given we are operating in that zone, we are almost like a 1/1000th of the Asia Pacific market. So our contribution is really very, very low. So we can say probably what are the key factors? The key factor is, first of all, our presence or our export is not in the major markets, like, for example, let me see. So, for example, we don't have our presence, or we don't export to the leading North American market. So we have almost no presence on the third, which is the European market. So the only area where we are doing our export, our business, is the Asia Pacific, and over there, our contribution is very, very minimalistic. And the reason being is really because there are two major players who are not only focusing on that market, the Asia Pacific, but also focusing on the other markets. So I think it clearly gives a message that the penetration or the access to the European, North American, or highly regulated industry, we are lacking that. So that it's not like, it's very simple. I think the marketing guys knows more than I do. If you don't access that, how you can even claim that you're going to have a portion of the pie. That's clearly the message over here. And then if we look what can be the reasons, there are a few reasons I was thinking of, and one of them is the sourcing and supply of the raw materials and the API. So approximately there are 30 APIs being produced by 6 to 7 local companies, and it meets only the 12% of the local needs. And 88% of the API comes from the China and India. So to me, that is a big answer actually, why our export is so low. If we cannot, I mean, what is the most important or costly or the key ingredient in the product, and that's the API. And we are not even able to satisfy our own needs. How we can even claim a competition in the foreign market when we don't have the key ingredient which we can rely on? It's almost like competing with someone who is holding your oxygen. So I don't see how we can survive if we don't have the API facilities. And I will tell you, even 6 or 7, I never heard of those companies, and I'm not sure what kind of synthesis they might be doing. I mean, is it like a 20-step synthesis, or is it like just making the aspirin, which is very simple reaction? And I can even question basically from where their starting materials or raw materials are coming. Is it they are doing like just like a last step, the crystallization or salt conversion, and they are still probably dependent because of their intermediate and raw materials on other companies. So this is a big question mark. So I think if we really want to, I don't even, as I have been working with the startup companies, I can't even think of going and exporting to the other markets and competing with those European and North Americans and Indian and Chinese companies when I cannot meet even my local needs. So it's a big question. I will say it's a national threat actually, not having the active ingredients manufactured in-house. Then the next one is the poor compliance of the manufacturing facilities. Out of 600 manufacturers, only few meets the basic GMP standards, and 2 of them claim the WHO qualified. And to be honest, when I sit with those guys and they tell me they are WHO qualified, I don't even consider that as a GMP standard. I mean, it's good. I mean, you qualify to bid for the WHO proposals, the RFPs, and you become probably the supplier for their list of essential drugs. But by terms of the quality standards, I don't even consider them close to the GMP or close to where I can say they can export the products to US or European markets. So none of them is qualified to manufacture for Europe and North America. So it doesn't surprise me why our exports are low, because none of them is qualified actually to export to any of those countries where the major share of the market is. So I will say we need to understand as a professional, the pharma is not a candy business. It's a business of drugs. It's related to the saving the lives of the people. So if we do not produce the quality products, we are really putting the people's life at risk. And we as a profession should be very concerned. And secondly, if you want to be in a pharmaceutical business where the norm or the rule of the game is the quality, you can't be there if you don't meet the quality standards. My feeling is our industry is very much into a defensive mode. If you look any of the, what they call it, the PPMA or something like that, the Association of the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers in Pakistan, they pride themselves by defending, like we don't need to do the BE studies, for example, or we got the waiver of the BE studies. They try to protect the industry rather than being like, we're going to adopt these standards and then we're going to go outside and export those medicines. So that's also a big concern. And in that part, I think we all are we should be the guilty of what we are doing there as a pharmaceutical manufacturers or as a businessman, and including even our regulatory authority. So that's another area, I think, which makes the export not competitive to the outside world. The next one is lack of contract development and manufacturing. I mean, this whole sector, which has been growing for last decade, is completely absent in the pharmaceutical industry of Pakistan. So the next is a lack of marketing and business development activities. So I'm going to ask you guys to type yes, if, and especially the most of the people who are in US, in North America or Europe, and contributing, I mean, and participating in this session. So have you ever been approached by a BD guy from Pakistan? And don't mention me yes if you have been approached by the owner of the company. And do not type yes if you have been approached by Uzair, because he is trying to connect with different people. So I really want you to type Y, I mean yes, if you have been approached, and N if you have not been approached by any of the BD guy from Pakistan. So can you please do that? Okay. So I see the numbers increasing. Wonderful. So that will give us the idea what we are doing even as a business people. I mean, I personally have not been approached, and I have been, it's not like I have been completely silo. I mean, I have been interacting with the industry. So every time it's me or Uzair Bhai will put me in touch with someone, but I have never been approached. So that's also something we need to think of. Then the security situation in Pakistan certainly has been a key factor, I will say. People would avoid to travel and meet and do the business deals if the security is not good. And then, of course, as this is a highly regulated industry, the FDA guys will not go to Pakistan and do the inspection of these facilities. I think this is a key concern, and I cross my fingers with the current government, and probably in future we will have a better situation in Pakistan. And then is the lack of the development mindset. We have become kind of a manufacturer, or in other words, I will call it even the glorified packager. Back in like a few years back, if you talk to any pharmaceutical manufacturer in Pakistan or the owner of the company, their first question was always licensing. Can you help us to get the license? So there was no mindset to develop the product in-house, and it was mostly. And I will quote an example. I remember back in 2005 when I was giving a seminar in Islamabad, and we were talking about the import of the API. And I raised this question: if we don't act now, there would be a time that we will be probably importing the finished product. And very recently, I heard that we are importing basically the pellets of a product, the omeprazole. And then what we do is putting into the capsules and put into the bottles. So that's why I use this word. We have become kind of like glorified packagers. So we are not really a pharma science or knowledge-based industry. We have become kind of like a labor industry or service industry. The lack of visionary leadership, poor advisors, zero connection with the scientific community. I mean, literally, without offending anybody, I used to call the most of the business people, especially in the pharmaceuticals, they're shopkeepers. All they count is like, we bought this one and we are selling of this much. So there is no vision. There is no, we don't always work for money. Sometimes we have a passion to do something big or make something legacy or have an impact at a larger scale. That kind of mindset is not there. So there is no, and then even when it comes to the advisors, I mean, they are very often surrounded by the people who will just be doing the buttering and not really giving them the right advice. But will be worried like if they say anything and that may lose their relationship. And they don't have, first of all, they don't have even the advisory boards, which are very, very critical to set the direction of the company. There is a zero connection with the scientific community. That was another question I was thinking to ask, if any of the people from the academia is online. Have they been ever approached by any of those companies? Probably answer would be no. And the vice versa as well is very true. I mean, have the pharmaceutical company was ever approached by the head of the institute, pharmacy institute or chemistry or biology? Probably the answer will also be the no on their side. So there is a huge disconnect there, and that's why we are not making any sort of like innovative or creative advancement. The next one is a lack of qualified, creative mind, critical thinkers, or hardworking human resources. I will say the universities has been producing the masses of self-centered and cutthroat degree holders. What I really means by this one is because our education system is such that it's my score, I am the first, I'm the gold medalist. So very individual based. And when they go finish their degrees and go into the industry, they are very self-centered. There is no team spirit. There is no main goal. So they are all trying to pull the legs, and that's very known. I mean, there are a lot of jokes around that, how the Pakistani people work and how they pull the legs of each other. And I think that really comes from the education system we have. So by the time, I mean, it takes the time when they're in the industry to become kind of like a team players. Lack of critical thinking and the passion for the profession, professionalism and the work ethics, they're all lacking. And I think that also makes the impact on the industry. And of course, not only like how we work and produce the products for the local market, but also for the global market. That very poor credibility. If we don't recognize this, we will never improve. So for me, if you don't identify that you are sick, you're gonna never go to the doctor and you will never be recovered from that disease. So I think we need to be open to confess that there are some gaps, and we need to fix those gaps if we really want to be industry, regulated industry, high quality industry, and industry who can export the drugs to the regulated markets. So DRAP has completely failed to uplift the standards as well as to have any international accreditation or recognition or partnerships. Those guys have become like the office goers and come back to home and have the salary. That's not enough if we want to be the international players. So I have not seen the delegate has gone to this country or that country and they have negotiated this deal or that deal. That kind of mindset or is not there. So I think they have failed miserably. It has become like a policing rather than partnering with the industry, and they take the pride in authority rather than the responsibility. So it's a more like this is my power to improve or not improve, rather than saying, okay, this is my responsibility. The lack of use of the science and the innovative technology. So that's another area. And I have numbered each of them, by the way. I will also say the lack or absence of plan or strategy to handle these challenges of at the government, industry, or at any level, actually. So there are sporadic groups working here and there in a very disconnected fashion. So we know we have the challenges, but there is no plan actually to address those challenges. So those were my very simple concerns in the diagnosis. And now I will ask actually the participants if you can list any of the top 3 reasons why we are not doing well in pharmaceutical industry, especially from the export point of view. And most of them are in front of you. So the first one was really the lack of the API and the raw materials. And second was the poor compliance of the pharmaceutical manufacturing companies. And then rest are in front of you. So I will encourage if you can type in the chat box, what are the top 3 in your mind, the concerns which we should be addressing to make our industry capable to produce the high quality, effective medicines, and we can actually export to the external world. Top 3 in the order of significance, I will encourage, please. Is anybody typing there, or I don't see the number going up? Okay, perfect. So let's move to the next step. I mean, let's look at the drugs landscape and see where, as a Pakistani industry, we can participate and contribute. So if I look at the category of the drugs, so there are the small molecules, usually derived from chemical synthesis. And then there is second is biopharmaceuticals, the biologics, include the recombinant proteins, the vaccines, the blood products, and then gene therapies, where we giving the cells the new or working copy of the missing or dysfunctional genes. Monoclonal antibodies or antibody drug conjugates, cell therapies, for instance, the stem cells or CAR T cells. Transplants is another area, implants, and combination drugs, and many other classes. So if you look at the kind of the drugs where Pakistan may, in a near future, contribute, it looks to me the small molecule is the area where probably we can easily penetrate. Vaccine is the another area where we used to manufacture the vaccines, and for some reasons we basically I will say not has made much progress on that front, rather has gone backward. And now there is some incentives to produce the vaccines, especially after the COVID pandemic. I don't see, from business case point of view, we can go with the biopharmaceuticals. It's a quite expensive development as well as the manufacturing. So is the case of the gene therapies. I think we are lacking there, even though, and the monoclonal antibodies is very much the same thing. And cell therapies, I know Dr. Uzair shared actually one of the posts where Shifa Hospital has gone into that kind of therapies. But one case here and there is not going to make a big difference. So I think as long as a nation, we focus on those key areas and work hard, we are not going to make a big impact. One news here and there is really not going to make a big difference. So the combination of the drugs, I mean, drug and device, probably another area where we can make some sort of contribution. So let's move to the next slide, even among the small molecules where we can make the difference, because each of those sectors are huge sectors. So if you look at the FDA office, how they treat these different classes of the therapies. So there is a CBER who is mainly focusing on new biological entities and biosimilars. There is a CDER, which is focusing on new chemical entities, 505(b)(2)s and generics. And then of course, there is CDRH, which is focusing on the medical devices. So I think there are two areas I have identified. Generics and medical devices probably are the area where we may be able to make the contribution. But we need to be aware what it will take actually to get to those markets. So the generic drugs, I will say the definition is very simple. It's a pharmaceutical / bioequivalent, which translates into the same quality, purity, safety, strength, and effectiveness as the brand product. So we need to meet the quality standards. It should be having the same strength, purity, and safety profile, as well as the effectiveness. So there is literally no difference in terms of the effectiveness of the generic versus the brand drug. If it's developed properly, if it's manufactured properly, if it's tested properly. The Hatch-Waxman Act of 1984 was an excellent intervention from the government, where they passed this act and make the generic companies to get the access to the prescription drugs. But at the same time, brand companies got the patent protection. So it was literally a win-win for both the generic as well as the brand companies. The public got the access to the cost-effective remedies, and government saves the billions of the dollars. So, I mean, if you look at the cost / prescription, the cost of the generic drug is 80% less than the brand product, and 60 to 80% prescriptions filled in US are the generic drugs. So US healthcare savings have been to $313 billion US, including like $96.1 billion US for Medicare and $48.5 billion for the Medicaid. The global generic market is in 2019 was worth of $278.4 billion US and will be growing with the compound aggregated growth rate of 10%. So the key drivers for the generic is always the cost. And I think there is a thrust for the reduction in the cost of medicine, whether it's at government level, at public level, at professional levels. The key drivers are obviously the patent expiry. The patents are going every year for the blockbusters going off, and then there leaves the opportunity for the generic manufacturer to get into the market. Affordability, not everybody can afford the drugs, especially if they are expensive. And there are some situations where it's very acute and chronic, and people have to take the medicine for a longer time. And certainly they cannot afford if they're not affordable drugs in the market. The COVID-19 obviously has a huge impact on the generic market because the medicine was just unavailable. Geriatric population is another area which has been increasing, and there is more dependency on the drugs. So that's why the availability of generic drug is very, very important. Market projection for 2030 is approximately like $760 billion US. So it's also like a generic business is also hitting actually the $1 trillion target. So I think that's the area where we should absolutely make the effort to get into that business, but not by licensing it. We need to go into the mindset of developing the generic products. Next one, if we look at the overall scenario of the generic development, I did work in the generic way back in 2000s, And this slide is really the reflection of my approach, how we used to develop the generic. It's a very aggressive approach. Normally, it starts with sourcing of the API. You identify the suppliers, you ask for the samples, make sure they have the open DMF, and they have the active DMF with the regulatory bodies where you are planning to file, but ask also the open sections of the DMF and request the samples for the reference standards. And then you do also procure the reference listed drug. I mean, that's against which you're going to produce the copy, and then you start working on that one. And that should not take more than 1 or 2 months to have everything in place to start the development. And then you start like months 2nd and 3rd, you will do the method development, especially given you got the open sections of the DMF, that will allow you to immediately start working on the method development. And then do the pre-formulation, which means really work with the API and the reference listed drug to understand what are the battery of the tests you need to do on the both to have the confidence that you have a product which can basically be recognized as a generic or bioequivalent. Then you do the formulation development, have some supporting stability study. But in the meanwhile, I think as a business person, you will have to start negotiating with the API suppliers. There are a lot of strategy. I mean, this is a whole new thing, how you can assure not only the supply of the API, but also how you can negotiate the quality as well as the cost. So there are a lot of strategies. I mean, you should have the backup suppliers, you should have the primary suppliers, and make sure you evaluate everything when you are choosing as a primary supplier, because shipping the API is not easy either. There's a lot of regulatory implications, especially when it comes to the quality. And then you do the formulation and process development. I think within 6 to 8 months, you should be in position to make a pilot batch and put on stability and then run the bioequivalent study. So bioequivalent study is very, very critical to claim any sort of like a generic copy of the brand product. Keep in mind, I mean, the developing a brand product is very lengthy and costly. And now you are going to share the market with a generic, with a minimalistic kind of development. I think going and producing and distributing a generic without doing the bioequivalency, it's really putting people's life in danger, and in danger in not in the sense you're dosing something poison, but you're dosing something which is not effective actually. So the person is not going to recover because your drug is not effective. So it's very important that we show the bioequivalence. And then of course you file the ANDA, and it will take approximately like 10 months for the review period. And then you get the approval, and then you launch, and then of course you do the life cycle management as well. So there is really like from the API method development and pre-formulation, then you go to the formulation development, then you do the bioequivalent study, and then you file the NDA, and then you get to the market. So the development to bio batch, I mean, the batch you can use for bioequivalent study is approximately 4 to 6 months with a capital of 350 to 500, almost like $500,000 US. And then API biobatch plus bioequivalent study, approximately 200K. And then you do the filing, which has its own fee of 200K. And then, of course, there are a lot of other costs I put. For the DMF, it's a 70K. And of course, if you're not manufacturing the API, you will not be filing for the DMF. If it's a foreign finished drug product manufacturing facility, you will have to pay also the 200K. So that's another, when you're looking into the development and filing the generic product, you need to think of like, are you going to produce in your own facility in Pakistan, or you're going to contract it out somewhere in the US or in Europe. I mean, there are different strategies how you can penetrate or get the approval. And then there are other strategies how you can bring it back to your own facility and get your facility also qualified. So the development cost of the complex injectables and biosimilars can run up to the several millions of US dollars. That's why I'm not recommending to go in that direction. Your first focus should be really to have the development of generic products. I think that's where you should be starting with. So I have this, I mean, if you look at the different sections of pharmaceutical development, the API is very critical. And then of course you need to do the formulation process development. Then you need to do the bioequivalent study. That's also very important. You need to file the ANDA and get the approval is also very important. So I will ask the attendees if they can, what is the most critical activity in the development of the generics? I will greatly appreciate. You can say API, you can say bioequivalent study, you can say the filing of the ANDA, or you can say the manufacturing. So please type in the chat box what you think is the most important. Okay, so if you ask me what is the most important in this whole scenario, it's really the bioequivalent study. And by the way, my area of expertise is really new chemical entities, and products. So that's why I consider the bioequivalent study is the most important. As a brand company, we put a lot of money, a lot of time to develop the new chemical entities, means really develop the process for the API versus you get it almost like off the shelf. I mean, you have the, as long as once it comes off the patent, all you need to have is the access to the DMF and then buy the API. You have done nothing actually in terms of the development. The second is, as a brand company, we do a lot of animal studies, clinical studies. Those are the most expensive part. And not only the one study, we do multiple studies, and not at a small scale, at a much larger scale. So here you are asked only to do one study. That is a bioequivalent study. So if you are refusing to do the bioequivalent study, or if the regulatory body is not imposing the bioequivalent study, I will almost consider it a sin. It's not even fair to do the pharmaceutical business if you're not doing the bioequivalent study. So thanks to the Hatch-Waxman law, who gives you the opportunity, and if you are not even willing to do that, that's really pity. That means it's not even, I will not call it ethically you're doing a business, you are just trying to make more money, and that's not ethically correct. So the next is, what would be the bioequivalent study? I mean, this is a definition from the FDA, the absence of significant difference in the rate and extent to which the active ingredient or the active moiety in pharmaceutical equivalent or pharmaceutical alternative becomes available at the site of the action. Of course, when administered at the same strength level and same route of administration. So I just pulled actually from one of the publications, and I highlighted the key areas. There are different designs of bioequivalent studies, the parallel, the crossovers, repeated or non-repeated. So I will go with the simplest example. You can do the crossover, where you will have to dose the reference listed drug and then your copy, and then randomly, I mean, you need to do it randomly. First, you can give the reference listed, and then washout period and then give your copy, and the next subject will be getting actually copy first and then washout period, and then so that's what really is the crossover. And then the conditions, it can be fasting or fed. I will say just pick the fasting one. Europe requires actually more than 12 subjects, but I will say let's stick to the minimum of 12. That would be another enough. I will suggest, to be honest, versus not doing the bioequivalent study, I will suggest even the 2 patients. It's still better than the nothing. Then have the 12 to 18 sample point. I mean, you collect the sample points after you administer the reference listed drug or the copy. And what you're really looking for when you do the bioanalysis, what you're really looking for is the Cmax, the maximum concentration, and area under curve. Area under curve at till the last sample point, or area under curve which you theoretically extrapolate. And the criteria is it should be really 80 to 120%. So within that tolerance with a confidence interval of 90%. Not a difficult thing, to be honest. It's really not a difficult thing. I think it's just the reluctance we are not doing it. I know there are some people who think it's very expensive, but look, I mean, you're getting like a $2.5 billion for a brand product, to develop a brand product, and here you are spending almost 1.25 million and you're getting a product. So I think it's still fair to do the right way of the development and have the bioequivalent study. So then once you have done the development work, you have done the bioequivalent study, you're going to, so let me, sorry, I'm not having in my mind the sequence of the slides. So here is what the outcome of bioequivalent study will look like, or the pharmacokinetic study will look like. I mean, you will have the period where so the first part is really the absorption of the drug, and second part is the elimination of the drug. So you see there is a time it reaches to the Cmax, the maximum concentration in the blood plasma, and that is purely based on the rate at what the drug is being released. And if you have the slow release, that's what's going to shift basically. So the Cmax will be shifting. But if Cmax shift, means it gets less and drug is properly absorbed, it's going to just extend your area of area under curve. So what I was saying is this is your Cmax, and then this is your last sample point. So if you calculate the area under curve up till the last sample point, that will become your the first parameter you need to compare in terms of the overall availability of the drug. And then if you extrapolate that, that will become your area under curve at the infinity point, and that's also the part of the criteria. The next one is the dissolution. I mean, this whole subject has a lot to talk about, but the way I will say is it's really your development tool. Basically, how you develop a generic product, the one way is to compare the dissolution profile of reference listed drug versus yours in the given conditions. And if you want to have a more confidence, then of course you explore the whole set of the medias and speeds to make sure that under all conditions you will be able to match the reference listed drug. I will say, just knowing our industry, just knowing our regulatory body, I will suggest even the in vitro bioequivalence. So the dissolution can become your in vitro bioequivalence for BCS class, where the drug is highly soluble, highly permeable. So I think you can ask for the waiver, but ask for the waiver of the bioequivalent studies based on the dissolution data. I will also say the dissolution data is really as an opportunity also actually to develop the formulation, but also 505(b)(2). I mean, you can, I mean, it's a very famous equation when it comes to the release of the drugs. This is really the dissolution kinetics. This is the surface area of the tablet or whatever the dosage form or the pellets, whatever. And then this is a concentration at saturation. So you can play with the solubility to improve basically the formulations. So there is a huge room, I will say, in the low solubility drugs. If you can improve the solubility of the drugs, you can certainly have the 505(b)(2), which is the next level actually to the generic development. So that's once you have done the development, you have done the bioequivalent study, you have the stability data. The next thing you do is basically file the ANDA. Generic product development is a cutthroat race for filing and getting the approval. If you look, the most of the generic companies, well-established generic companies, they start developing the generic version of the brand product the moment they know this is the year when the patent, they are coming off the patent. The GDUFA is around 200K, so you pay the 200K. The first filer will get the 6 months exclusivity. So if the brand product based on their patent get the 20 years exclusivity, and here is the generic companies who are fighting for the 6 months exclusivity, because that's where they make most of the money, because there is not too much competition in terms of the cost. So you file the ANDA and they will do the first screening to see if you have all the components in your filing, and if that is accepted and it's complete and acceptable, then it go to the review. Otherwise, it's refused to file. This refused to file is equally applicant to new chemical entities or brand products. But I think most of the companies have now, with the ECTD and the computers, I think we have kind of like understood what are their requirements, and there are a lot of like mock screening and evaluation or acceptance you can do to make sure that you will not be refused to file. And then of course the reviewers, they will review your CMC section, because that's the only section which is important in the ANDA filing. They will do the bioequivalence review, and they will do your labeling review, and then they will request at the same time to inspect the facility where you're going to do the manufacturing. So once you have passed the criteria of filing and go through the review process, and at the same time it triggered the pre-approval inspection of your facility. So I will say the most of the things you know whether it's going to work or not. I mean, if you have done the bioequivalent study, you know it does it meet the criteria or not. So I think there is not too much ambiguity there, except like how you put the ANDA together. In terms of the CMC, there might be some gaps, but I will say that's also, I mean, if all you need to do is submit your development report, have the stability data and the manufacturing process. So I don't see there would be any sort of uncertainty. Labeling, very much same. I mean, you can copy paste, except with some of excipients if you have changed. And then the decision is your CMC micro label is acceptable? If it's acceptable, yes. And if it's not, they're gonna issue you not approvable letter, means you have been denied actually the approval. The bioequivalent study, same thing. If there is deficiency, they're gonna issue you the bioequivalence deficiency letter. You will have to repeat this study, or you will have to provide the additional data. But if everything looks good, the chances should be that, by the way. I don't see why someone will file the ANDA, because they should have also internal experts, right? So it's not always FDA to point out your deficiency. You can point out your deficiency yourself. But of course, there is a trade-off, like you want to file first. So sometimes you will file with limited data, but at the same time, you will generate the data. I mean, there are a lot of strategies, and I play all of them actually. Sometimes it's better to file with a limited data, but be conscious that FDA can come back and take time actually to generate those data. So this way, when they come back to you, you can provide them the information and we don't, it doesn't.
Umar bhai, may I
Yeah.
request you that, to make it more interactive, we have some time to get some quick feedback and input because most of the people, so they have the engagement. So we may request you to share your material and we can forward and we can invite and get them connected.
Sure.
So
Are we,
because, yeah.
have we gone beyond the time already?
We are just on time, but I think we should spare little time, about 5 or 10 minutes to get some quick feedback from the participant.
Sure.
And and then we will request you to share your material, and we have
Sure.
the detail of all the participants, and we can share with them and we can get them connected. We are seeing a lot of interest from the participant, but many of the people, they have overlapping engagement, the physicians particularly. So now we are open. Particularly, I would like to mention many of the physicians who are here from the US. They started their career back in Pakistan. And I'm sure how many of you may be knowing that all the pharmaceutical which is being manufactured in Pakistan, so there is no concept of bioequivalence. So for any medicine, there are two primary things. Number one is the efficacy, and the number two is the safety. Rather, the safety first and the efficacy is the next one. And these are determined by two things. As we know, all the generic, they should be bioequivalent. And as pointed out by Dr. Umar Hayat, unfortunately, as of today, we could not bring this concept of quality to the local industry. And we have Dr. Ubaidullah. I think there are many good news now that the DRAP is taking step to move in that direction. So I hope that in the future, but as a user, as a physician, you have no medicine and the same issue. So that's extremely pertinent. And as mentioned by Dr. Umar, that's the key and the most important thing is to have the bioequivalence in place. So now we have certain lab. And I think the message is the real market is the North America, which is huge. And it's who is going to take the lead, who is going to be the first one. But surprisingly, I have something very different. I'm not going to take time. Just a couple of comments on this side, because the industry is growing in Pakistan. And when the competition is very intense, you look for the alternative ways to explore the export market, go to the regulated market, and likewise. So I think this is quite a discussion. And we have the regulator as well, Dr. Ubaid, and we have the Sameer Dosal, who is from the business perspective. So may I request Mr. Sameer Dosal just to add a few comments on this thing. Mr. Dosal, over to you.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Dr. Zair Sahab. Zabardast kaam kar rahe hain aap. Umar Hayat Sahab, I think this is very, very informative, very to the point, very focused. And obviously, your focus at this point in time, your concerns, your issues that you have pointed out is phenomenal. I think I'm from Pakistan. I spent 20 years of my life in Pakistan and 20 years of my life here in Canada. When you are in Pakistan, you do not think outside the box. You get stuck when you are in business or you are a professional, whatever happens. So where is the gap? That's where we need to identify ourselves. To how can we fill that gap to create that awareness, to see that it is just beyond a paycheck and beyond a job. For the business community, it's beyond making money. So I am looking at it from a different perspective. I worked in the pharmaceutical industry. I was perhaps the first person or first group, my company, to introduce multis dehumidification in Pakistan, where slowly and surely things came about. I hope I have a few minutes to be able to sort of share my thoughts. So when that was happening at that point in time, 35 years ago, there were multinational pharmaceutical companies in Pakistan. There were a handful of small groups of Pakistani people who made an effort, and they were not even recognized. lo and behold, good, bad issues with politics in Pakistan happened, and a lot of pharmaceutical companies moved out. So that was an interesting era. And I think that people made that effort, the business community made that effort, the people in the industry who were perhaps traders, and it's no disrespect. I think that's a natural progression. So what is it that we can and should be doing is to helping them create the advice, the guidance from the outside world. When I go back to Pakistan, when people say, oh, you think differently? Why we think differently? Umar sahab, why do you think differently? Why do all of us think differently? Because we see the world. We see what the global world is doing, what best practices are, and so on and so forth. So I personally think that, and to your point, Umar sahab, that you want, if they're advisors, and I totally understand that. If they're advisors, if they're paid advisors, they will probably get stuck. And no disrespect to anybody, it does happen. And they're amazing people in our country, not taking away from all those great people. But those challenges are there. Those challenges will be there. So I think that an advisory group should be created, connecting people in the academia, in the industry, and in global world, and the APPNA team and the Canada-Pakistan Business Council and the Research Council and so on and so forth. So submissions and guidelines should perhaps be more like collective rather than individual. If Sameer Dosal gives us a recommendation, people will know he's got an interest. But if Sameer Dosal combines with Umar Hayat and Dr. Uzair and Dr. Shafiq and all those people, and we combine and put a package together as concerned and interested people that we are bringing in technology, we are bringing in a business mindset, that is something that we can perhaps do. Whilst I was listening to this conversation, I took the liberty, and I just want to say that I took the liberty of reaching out to somebody who I have been connected with when I've been taking delegations, is Mr. Syed Asfar Ehsan. Syed Asfar Ehsan ran some amazing groups connecting the business community, the bureaucrats, and the businessmen and the politicians. He now, for all his efforts, he has actually been appointed as the chairman of Board of Investment with the capacity of the Minister of State. I took the liberty of saying that I'm speaking in that webinar. I shared this thing, and I said, I am going to suggest to this group that perhaps collectively we take a focused delegation. Why BOI? Because everything is connected to development, and development has to be linked with business. So I'm suggesting, I've told them that I'm going to suggest to the group that we can perhaps, collectively combine, put a package together, make suggestions, make recommendations, and take it to them as a group, as a delegation, and to see how we, the diaspora, the people who feel for Pakistan, that we can give back to our country. Umar, your role will be different. My role will be different. Uzair Saab's role will be totally different. But if we package this together, we can structure the strike while the iron's hot. We have got the right people over there. I have got enough amazing respect for what he's doing. Syed Asfar Ehsan, we know Amir Hashmi. Amir Hashmi created a software company, is a special tech zone. We have access to people like those. And if there is something that we can work on it, I want to say that from a Canada-Pakistan Business Council, living in North America, seeing the world from this point of view, I am willing to take that step, to work as a group, as a team, and to take it forward. I don't want to take away from the main focus, but I think bringing me in, Uzair Saab, that's what I hope, that at least this is my contribution towards identifying that how we can do it. The businessman does want to make money, but if you guide him that, and if you help him clear his mindset, that is what I think Umar Saab is trying to identify. And I hear you, Dr. Umar Saab, and for what you have done, we can take it further.
Can you give me a 10 minutes so that, my apologies, I was not able to track the time. But I really want to point to the next few slides. Give me just 10 minutes and I will be very simple.
I'm fine. I've said my bit. I can continue, but what I wanted to share, I'm done. And if it for the shortage of time, I'll step back. I think Umar Sahab, you need to take the shot and go forward.
I will do the very quick because I think there was a huge amount of information. It's such a huge industry, but I'm gonna be quick because I think the generic part is touched. So let me go to the next slide. Okay, so these are the patents which are really coming off the next year. So I think if somebody really wants to jump on the development of the generics, these are the area. Doesn't mean if you are a first filer or second filer, at least develop it. And you can do the partnerships, you can have the contract manufacturing somewhere else if you're afraid that your facility is not up to speed. If you want to do the bioequivalent study in Pakistan, just for your own confidence, do it. If you want to do it, do the patients in Pakistan, do the bioanalysis somewhere else to have that kind of rigorosity you needed to file anywhere in the world. I'm going to move to the next. So this is our new chemical entities. This is my area. That's where I work. So it really starts from screening the compounds. Then you go into the preclinical study. You do the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Then you get to the file. And then you, of course, get the approval. This is a 15 years process, 7 to 15 years process. And it takes a lot of money. It takes from somewhere to 700, from 1.25 to 2.5 billion US dollar. And the reason I don't want to stop and I want to continue on this one is there are the business opportunities. It doesn't need too much GMP. It doesn't need too much regulations. So those are the opportunities I want to touch upon. So if you look for the development, it takes a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of researchers to bring one product to the market. It takes 7 to 15 years. The cost can be 1.5 to 2.5 billion US dollar. PDUFA fee alone, the PDUFA fee alone is almost around $3 million, just to give you the idea what the brand product filing means. But still, US has been approving the NDAs and BLAs. So that's as the list of the NDAs or BLAs approved last year, 2017, 46, 2018, 59, 2019, 48, 2022, 53. On average, FDA is approving almost like 40 drugs per year. So if you take just the cost, I took the average cost of $2 billion and multiplied by 4. So it means the $80 billion development work is happening every year, right? The FDA approval rate is 10%, so which means the 90% of the drugs fail from phase 1 all the way to the phase 3. So that means there is a unrealized capital which is lost due to the failures around 240 billion US dollars. But I really want to make this point. There is a 320 billion US dollar which is just spread across this different development platforms every year. And as I said, not every activity needs to be the GMP or of high quality. So for example, screening of the molecules, it's purely non-GMP activity. All you need is a good synthetic and medicinal chemist, and then have the proton NMR or the mass spec, and you are ready to go. So there are the business models. You can have, this is the area where we call the more is less, because they are screening a lot of molecules and they are trying to find the lead. And that's where you can also make a lot of money. And there are different business models. I will say there is a FFTE models where normally are charged like 10,000 to 15,000 US dollars per month per person. And then there is another model which is really coming up. The people put the lab equipments and people, and then they give the lump sum cost to the startup companies. So it almost becomes like extension. And this model is very popular with the big companies. So after spending 3 to 12 months, you can create the value of 3 to 5 million US dollars. So that's the area where I think Pakistan business community, you don't need to always file the NDAs or the ANDAs to get the money, but there are the development. Now, the beauty of doing this kind of job is you're creating a knowledge-based industry. You're creating the experienced people. You are creating the knowledge of the chemistry. And that will take you, if you can synthesize the screening like small scaffolds or the molecules to hit the target, you are having ready the people who can even do the synthesis of the APIs, because chemistry doesn't change whether you make a one molecule or you make the 20-step synthesis. Each step is still a one-step reaction, but it's still one molecule. So that's the one thing. The other is the raw materials, the regulatory starting material, intermediate, tox supplies, all again the non-GMP. All you need to have is the good analytical methods and reasonable documentation. This industry is also going pretty at the rate of 6%, and there is a $53.4 billion US market. I am putting this proposal because I am outsourcing for 3 raw materials, and if you look, the budget is a $40 million US. And this is my one project I'm working on, and this is a proposal I got. So there are 3 starting materials for different levels of the API manufacturing. There is a cost. So my budget for 5,000 kilogram of the API, it's $40 million, and it doesn't need to be GMP, but it needs the API manufacturing facility or the raw material manufacturing facility. It needs the good chemists. It needs the analytical technology. So that's another area. There is a lot of possibility where you can increase your export in pharmaceutical world, not really doing always the GMP. The next one is the animal studies. I mean, those are also not the GMP. Of course, that data gets submitted, that data gets scrutinized. But my question is, there is a ADME studies, there is a proof of concept studies, there are the animal models, well-established animal models for the diseases. There the compounds can be done, the proof of concept study. And you can also negotiate with the startup companies saying, look, I mean, we don't have the top-notch GLP facility, but we can do for your proof of concept study. And once it's proven working, you can take it somewhere else and regenerate that data. So there is a lot of room to negotiate and be open for the discussion. Talk studies. So there are different business models. What I'm saying is basically the animal management. Can we have just a vivarium and just manage the animals and sell the animals? That's also a possibility. The standalone, or if we can do the studies in collaboration with the other, because the only area where we might be weak is the bioanalytical data, right? So you can dose the animals, you can manage the animals, you can feed the animals. Those are all things which are low-hanging fruit. And I'm giving you the example. We are doing a 2-year repeated oral dose carcinogenesis study in rats, and the quote we got is a $1.5 million. Okay, so there are a lot of opportunities where we can increase our export. And sorry, this is the end of my presentation, and that's actually my area. Generic, I have done it a long time ago. But so anyway, the contract manufacturing, another segment completely absent from our the scope of the work, and that industry is also growing extremely. Like in 2020, it's $90 billion US, and in project it is a 120. Doesn't need the GMP stuff there either. So this is another area where I think we can make a big difference. Then the clinical trials, of course, a lot has been spoken on this one. I'm not going to talk a lot because it has been presented on this platform by really some other clinical companies. But there is a lot of opportunities here as well. All I want to say is Pakistan is extremely well suited for this kind of studies. We have the population, which is 220 million. We have the disease prevalence. We have the highly qualified people. All we need to do is the draft need to be a little flexible. They need to give the, I always call the companies are your clients. More clients are the better. Encourage them to file anything they can. And then you can categorize. Some are only capable to import the drug and store the drug or distribution. Give them that license. There are others who can only conduct the study. Okay, they may not be able to do the bioanalytical. Give them license for that one. There is another one who can do the bioanalytical. Give the license for the bioanalytical. So that you can fragment the overall into different sections and give them the license only to do their job, and then do the control. So I think that's where even the FDA, they don't discourage you to register your facility because it's bringing the revenue to them. What they do is that once you file the NDA, then they go after you. Now they will check and want to make sure that you have everything they need to meet the quality. The other is the meetings. I really want to talk about this one, like how the FDA is conducting the meetings. And I want DRAB to reflect upon this one. There are different kinds of the meeting. You include in the request the statement of the purpose, the objective, you propose the agenda, you list the questions, and you also basically ask the people who you want to be involved. I mean, of course, not by name, but by their area of responsibility. And then meeting is granted, okay? And then you prepare the briefing package. You need to submit 4 weeks at least before the meeting. And that thing, there is a rigorous process, how we put together the briefing package, how many times we review it, where is the source data, how we QC it. We prepare very well. It's almost like a war plan. And then we do the multiple rehearsals. On the meeting days, the management goes like 2 or 3 days before the meeting. We do the rehearsal, prepare us very well, have all the backup staff, like who is going to support or answer or provide any data. If an alert, then we have the meeting with the FDA, very professional, very like a science-based or database. And then of course, they will write the meeting minutes. And after the meeting minutes, if there is any clarification, you will have the chance to have another call with the FDA. And if not, if you still don't agree, court is always an option. I just want that we may not be able to implement this kind of the meeting approach, but this should be our always kind of a target or reference. It's not a walk-in or give a phone call or I know this person and let's meet. And no, it should be very, very professionally and like a pre-established meeting agendas and so forth. So the next one is the key elements. Of course, the pharmaceutical is highly regulated industry. It's a business, it's a science, it's a public health. I put the point, but one thing I want to say, the business wants to make the money, as Saul said, and they want to grow, okay? If you squeeze them too much, they will leave, okay? And those who will stay, believe me, they will not be producing the quality products. They will be producing the substandard, spurious, and counterfeit drugs probably. And then public, of course, deserve to have the products which are affordable, of high quality, which are effective. And science is another thing. I mean, we need to open the doors for the science. And regulation, I mean, I think I will say a few more words over here. Drug price control. So that's another subject I want to touch upon. I know this was my question, like, okay, drug prices have increased in Pakistan. Probably some people are considering it's to relieve the pharma, to give the relief to the pharma industry. Do we agree? Was that a good approach? I will say probably yes, but however, we did it very badly. The cost of the goods and the quality is built in the product, okay? The choice of the excipients you make, the process you use, the MSs you agreed upon, the continuous processes. My goodness, I can reduce the cost of the, the cost of the drugs, okay? Pick a low risk, widely used product, okay? Continuous process compatible, okay? Do a pilot project. Why not DRAB sit with the one of the company, design a continuous process, okay? And that will bring the cost of the goods down. It will still give the due benefit or the profit to the company. But at the same time, can you imagine if you have implemented a continuous process, your prestige will go around the world because this is a key area. FDA just approved a guidance for the continuous processes. The DRAB will gain a prestige. Company will get the publicity. Yes, Pakistan has done this, or they were pioneer in this one. Encourage them to increase the batch size. That's another way to decrease the cost of the goods. Okay, the facility equipment remains the same. Just increase the batch size. Okay, qualify the manufacturing process or the suppliers. Ask them, do not do any testing. Move to the zero testing. So that will reduce their cost, and that reduction in the cost can be transferred to the public because now they are not doing. I will say even enhance the oversight. Ask the one inspector to sit with them in the facility, whether they are making the large scale batch, whether they are doing the continuous process. or whether they're doing the, and reach to the point where you both have the confidence, and then ask them, you know what, we don't want you to test for anything. Just go and manufacture, and sporadically we will review your batch record to see whether you have done it right or not. So there is a lot of ways to bring the cost down, not just giving the, because you want to relieve the pharmaceutical industry and raise the price. So there would, so if any of those or all of those actually would have been implemented, we would have been successful to reduce the cost, but also would have made an, it would be made a news actually in the pharmaceutical industry. So the next one is the experts. I think you touched upon this, Vishal, as well. The success story of China and India is purely based on the experts who gave them the access to the North American and European market. So these are your implanted BD people actually, who are very connected, who are having very influential positions in the industry. And if you use them, there is a chance that you will have the good deals and find business partners. They can act as serve as a liaison or the bridge, and you can use them as advisor also to the same point. And on the top, they all want to help. They all want to give back to the motherland. So the call for the time is really the first generation of the expats is retiring and getting old. So it's really time to leverage and take the advantage of them. Corruption. I really want to talk about this one. And this is my definition of the corruption. For a petty personal gains, we cause the irreversible damage to an individual, to a family, to a community, to a society, nation, or the humanity. I mean, if a SDO, civil engineer, make a bad road, believe me, if he counts what he gained as a bribe versus what the damage he has caused, how many cars he has damaged the life of the cars who travel on that road, because road is not proper. Now the wear and tear is the worst. The time, because it has slowed down the speed, the dust it has created, the food market which is around that, and people are going to consume that, the diseases it will cause. A single, if that has caused the death of one doctor or one engineer, how much money we have spent to raise that doctor, how much contribution he would have made to the society. So for me, it's like making a hole in a boat where one is also on board with others, and we all basically sinks. But if we work together with respect, with honesty, with fairness, and we give our 100%, we can all soar, we can all fly. So that's another one. That's my last slide. Can we make a Shaukat Khanum of pharmaceutical? Can we make a Barriaton of pharmaceuticals? Can we put all of them in one big area where manufacturers on one side, the analytical lab is on the next, the bioanalytical is another one, the vivarium. So that would be, and need to find probably the Elon Musk of the pharmaceuticals who can make this happen. So thank you very much. And my apologies for time. I was trying to find myself to see if I'm doing time-wise, but I'm glad that we are able to reach to the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Umar, Hayat. I think we are running extremely short of time. So the last comment, just a couple of comments from Dr. Ubaidullah. Dr. Ubaidullah, can you unmute and please share?
Thank you very much, Uzair bhai. And in fact, a very elaborative discussion by Dr. Umar, starting from the product development and with the focused approach on the regulatory oversight as well. Just to share with all the colleagues that I will not comment anything about drug regulation of pre-2012. But after the establishment of DRAP in 2012, in fact, most of the things which Dr. Umar has pointed out regarding the safety, efficacy, and quality of the drug product, we have already achieved, and in some cases, we are on the path of that. If we say, and to summarize, that since 2019, we have not accepted any single pharmaceutical registration application with CTD. And when I'm talking about CTD, then all the components which are essentially required, then I'm talking about that. Second point about the quality surveillance, in 5 years' time, now 4 of our labs and government labs are WHO pre-qualified. As far as you have asked about the drug regulation international scenario, in last 3 years, we have qualified 2 steps of WHO accreditation, and in April or May, we are expecting final audit of Drug Regulatory Authority. And at the same time, now we are the member of Upsala Monitoring Center for the Pharmacovigilance activity as well. So just to share with all colleagues that now we are not that type of regulatory authority like which were previously working like in any shape. So we are right now on the track of all those things, and we have also introduced in vitro dissolution profiling that with the innovator product for the comparative dissolution profile. These are the few things. Now, last 2 points. One, I totally support Mr. Dosal's point of view and its recommendation regarding interaction with the Board of Investment. And please take regulatory authority also on the part of that very forum of the Board of Investment. And one missing link, which I have already shared in such type of presentation, that is the academia. Because what you are talking about the bioequivalence, you are talking about the R&D, you are talking about the bioanalytical, that is the missing link in Pakistan scenario in the academician needs to be associated with the regulatory authority and with the industry as well for all the requirements which the industry needs. Because as you said, that industry is not the sole forum for the performance of all activities. And here, it is lacking in Pakistan that industry, regulatory authority and academics are not on the same page. So these are all the points, and I hope so that in coming years, I'm not coming years, I'm talking about very far. Dr. Uzair knows well that our legislation is also in the phase of amendment and all things are phase of improvement. And we do hope that in a couple of years, we will be able to achieve major milestones in the regulatory authority. And one last invitation to the APPNA merit, as all colleagues are coming to Pakistan around 20th December. So I invite all APPNA colleagues to spare an hour and visit our DRAP headquarters. We will arrange a meeting with our CEO and all the leading regulators, with the APPNA colleagues like Shahid Rafiq and Danish Bhatti and all other colleagues. So I invite all of you to be with us, to guide us, so that Pakistan regulatory authority scenario should be reflected in a better way. And I do hope that Dr. Umar Hayat in his next presentation will present a different scenario of regulatory authority. Thank you from my side.
Thank you very much, Dr. Badallah, for your very generous offer. I think that the group will visit you. So we have Dr. Danish Bhatti. Dr. Danish Bhatti, can you formally thank you to all of the participants and close the session?
Thank you. Thank you very much. This was very complicated session, especially the business planning for someone like me who's just a physician. But I think this is the need of the hour. I think from our side, on physician side, we can bring in the expertise of what our clinical needs are and what we see the gaps from our practice in North America and practice in Pakistan. But we really need help from experts like you guys to help develop the business case. And I think one thing missing in Pakistan is the spirit of entrepreneurship in physicians. The entrepreneurship is limited in adding pharmacy to their clinic, running their own clinics, self-employed, and having a lab right next to it. But that's not the true spirit of entrepreneurship. We should be at the forefront of new drug development. So thank you very much for this excellent session. And I'm looking forward to more interactions. Thank you, everyone, for joining and staying.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you very much to all of you. So nice of you. Great. Thank you.